He bought a plane ticket with cash, wore a crisp, completely ordinary business suit, ordered a bourbon and soda. To anyone looking, he was just an average guy heading home for the holidays. But at 30,000 feet, he hands a flight attendant a note that literally changes aviation history forever. He takes 200 grand in ransom money, straps on a parachute, and jumps out of a commercial airliner right into a freezing stormy night sky. And then, poof, he completely vanishes. No body was ever found, no suspect was ever charged.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a case that has absolutely haunted investigators for over 50 years. We're unpacking the incredible, true story of D.B. Cooper. Guys, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill crime. This remains the only unsolved hijacking in the entire history of American aviation. It's a perfectly executed mystery, and we're going to break down the whole shebang together.
Section 1. The Ordinary Passenger.
Let's step back to November 24th, 1971. Just the mundane hustle of Portland International Airport the day before Thanksgiving. Families heading home, people wrapping up work. Absolutely nobody is thinking about hijackings. And look how wildly fast this all escalates. Boarding for Flight 305 happens at 3 p.m. for what's supposed to be a super quick flight to Seattle. Barely 10 minutes later, at 3:10, the threat drops. By 5:45, they land to negotiate. And then at 8:11 p.m., the ultimate climax happens in the pitch black night.
Now, it's kind of hard to imagine today, right? Walking through an airport with zero metal detectors, no ID checks, no bag screens. But back then, a guy buys a ticket under the name Dan Cooper with $20 cash and just strolls right onto the plane. Mid-40s, dark business suit, black clip-on tie, cool as a cucumber ordering a bourbon. He was polite, he was quiet. He's not screaming or waving a weapon around. This whole gentleman hijacker vibe completely masks the incredibly calculated danger of what he's about to do.
So right after takeoff, Cooper hands a little note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Now, Florence, like a lot of flight attendants back then, just assumes it's a passenger passing her his phone number. She drops it right in her pocket without even looking. That's when Cooper leans in and very calmly says, "Miss, you'd better look at that note, I have a bomb." Florence sits down next to him, he pops his briefcase open just a crack, and boom, she sees red cylinders, wires, a giant battery. In a split second, the reality on Flight 305 totally flips. Then he lays out his terms, and they are incredibly specific. He wants $200,000 in unmarked bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready the exact second they touch down in Seattle. And honestly, here's the absolute wildest part to me. While the pilot is frantically radioing Seattle, and the plane is just circling for 2 solid hours, Cooper just sits there. He casually orders another bourbon, he smokes a few cigarettes, just waiting patiently, totally in control, with a literal bomb sitting on his lap.
Section 2. The Ransom and Release. While our guy is sipping bourbon in the sky, it is an absolute madhouse on the ground. Authorities are scrambling to pull this ransom together to save the 36 passengers on board. And the sheer scale of this is nuts. 200 grand in $20 bills, that is 10,000 individual notes. The FBI, thinking ahead, actually photographed every single one of those 10,000 bills before handing them over. They logged every single serial number, banking on the fact that if this cash ever hit circulation, they'd have a massive breadcrumb trail right back to him.
Okay, so the plane lands in Seattle, the passengers are released, and the cash and 4 parachutes are brought on board. But here's a fascinating little detail. The FBI either messed up or they intentionally set a trap, because one of the reserve parachutes they gave him was a dummy, like a training chute, sewn completely shut. It literally wouldn't open. But Cooper, he was way too sharp for that. He meticulously checked every piece of gear and left that dummy chute right there on the plane. He wasn't falling for it. Now it's just Cooper and 4 crew members left. He orders the pilot to take off and head toward Mexico City. But listen to these flight instructions he gives. He demands the altitude stay under 10,000 feet, landing gear stays down, and wing flaps locked at exactly 15 degrees. Why does that matter? Because these incredibly technical demands proved Cooper wasn't just some random thug. He had deep, specialized aerospace knowledge. He knew exactly what configuration would force that commercial jet to fly slow enough to make jumping out of it survivable.
Section 3. The Impossible Jump.
So Flight 305 is back in the air, heading south right into the teeth of a heavy, freezing rainstorm over the Pacific Northwest wilderness. Cooper tells the last flight attendant to go to the cockpit and lock the door behind her. He is totally alone in the cabin. He uses some parachute cord, ties that massive heavy bag of ransom money right to his body, and then, at exactly 8:11 p.m., the crew feels a massive pressure pop in their ears. The fighter jets trailing them confirm it. The rear staircase of the Boeing 727 had been dropped mid-flight. Cooper had just leaped into the freezing, pitch-black abyss. Eventually, the plane lands safely in Reno, Nevada. They search the cabin, find the briefcase, and realize the bomb was just a bluff all along. But the hijacker? Completely gone. Which brings us to the biggest question of the whole explainer. Did he actually survive that jump? That is the exact question that turns this story from a crazy heist into a forensic obsession that has lasted for decades.
Section 4. The Manhunt.
This sparked Operation NORJAK, literally one of the most massive, exhausting ground searches in FBI history. You've got hundreds of agents combing through dense forests, right? Over 800 people interviewed. And for 9 long years, absolute crickets. No body, no parachute, nothing.
And you want to talk about frustrating, out of that massive $200,000 ransom, only a tiny fraction was ever found. $5,800.
And get this, the FBI weren't even the ones who found it. Fast forward to 1980. An 8-year-old boy is just digging a fire pit in the sand during a family camping trip along the Columbia River, and he unearths bundles of rotting, decaying 20s. The FBI runs the serial numbers, and bingo, it's a perfect match for the ransom cash. But here's the kicker. The money was found way downstream from the suspected drop zone. So instead of solving the case, this just made things weirder. How did it get there? And where in the world was the other $194,000?
So, with nothing out in the woods, investigators had to pivot back to the only things left on the plane. Remember that black clip-on tie he was wearing? Well, he took it off and left it right on his seat. Years later, using way more advanced tech, scientists found rare, microscopic titanium particles embedded in the fabric. Now, back in 1971, you didn't just pick up titanium dust anywhere. Those specific particles meant Cooper almost certainly spent time in a highly specialized aerospace or chemical plant. The guy wasn't just smart, he was an industry insider.
Section 5, Suspects and Clues.
Armed with this ultra-specific profile, a cool-headed guy with military or aerospace chops, the FBI had their work cut out for them. They looked at over 1,000 people. But let's zoom in on 3 of the heavy hitters. First up, Richard McCoy. He pulled off an almost identical skyjacking just 5 months later. His family even found a parachute harness in 2023 they say ties him to it. But witnesses said Cooper had brown eyes, McCoy's were blue. Plus, he had a pretty solid Thanksgiving alibi. Next, Robert Rackstraw, ex-Army paratrooper, total renegade. Sleuths claimed to find his name in coded letters sent to newspapers, but the FBI wasn't buying it. And then there's William Gossett, a retired Air Force colonel, who supposedly gave a deathbed confession. Sounds great, right? Except 0 physical proof, just a story. Despite all these insanely tantalizing leads, the hard evidence just was never there. So in 2016, the FBI drops a bombshell. They officially closed the active investigation into D.B. Cooper. Think about that. After 45 years and thousands of interviews, the feds just packed it up. They stepped away without ever charging a single soul.
Section 6, the Unsolved Mystery.
Now, just because the FBI closed the file doesn't mean the rest of us stopped looking, right? Amateur sleuths are still obsessed with this case. When you boil it all down, there are basically 3 ways this ends. Theory 1, the elements got him. Experts will tell you, jumping into a freezing rainstorm at night over a dense forest, that's basically a death sentence. Theory 2, he was a highly trained paratrooper, beat the odds, and survived the impossible drop. Or, Theory 3, and this is the wild one, he makes it, creates a fake identity, walks away with a fortune, and lives out his days as just some regular neighbor. Maybe even sitting on his couch watching documentaries about himself.
It's just the ultimate mind bender, isn't it? A chaotic, terrifying plunge into the dark, pulled off by a guy who was perfectly polite, sipping a bourbon. So, I'm leaving you with this. Based on everything we just unpacked, the flawless heist, the aerospace clues, that rotting cash in the sand, who do you think D.B. Cooper really was? And where in the world did he go? Take a look at the facts, weigh the evidence, and decide for yourself. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep that curiosity alive.